Well, thank you all for having me here, and thank you for coming tonight. I think everything that you just saw about inbound marketing, it's so cool to me to see what they were just talking about, because a lot of the principles that were introduced there are the same exact principles that we've built our business off of, like those SMART goals that you saw. I literally, in my daily work, we were prioritizing our work off of these SMART goals, and we've built a $1.6 billion business off of it. And something that I think is a wonderful opportunity here in Brazil is that we've managed to sort of forge all of these practices and these methodologies in the economy of the United States, which online, it is extremely competitive there now. And what we're seeing is that in Latin America, we're not facing the same type of competition that we do in the United States. So we're giving you tactics that were built for very competitive markets, and you're able to sort of introduce them a little bit early in this market, which I think is an awesome opportunity. But I'll stop talking about that. I want to talk to you guys now about UX and how it relates to inbound marketing, because we talk a lot about inbound marketing over here, and we talk a lot about design over here. And as a senior UX designer at HubSpot, I've noticed that actually inbound marketing philosophies and UX philosophies really speak to each other in a lot of ways. They share a lot of common values. So to give you a little bit of a background on myself, as I mentioned, I'm a senior UX designer at HubSpot, so I actually oversee the design for HubSpot.com and all of our primary web properties. These receive somewhere around 8 million hits per month. When I started at the company a year and a half ago, it was around 1.5 million. So we've grown significantly since then, and I regularly have to update my bio. I just updated it from 7 million to 8 million, which is a wonderful problem to have, but it also presents a lot of design problems. And so we've had to create really, really sound processes that work not only with our high-impact website, but also with our inbound marketing methodologies. So that's really what I want to discuss. So I want to start by sort of defining what UX design is and what inbound marketing is. Does anybody here have, if you're comfortable with talking, does anybody here have any ideas for like how you would define UX design? What is UX to you? Any thoughts? Visibility? Usability, yes.
UX is how your user interacts with your product and how can achieve his objects with your product or project.
Absolutely. Okay, I think you nailed it. So this is, if I were to just say it in my own words, I would say that UX is a deep thinking, objective, goal-oriented, adaptable, and well-informed way of designing every single aspect of a system and its experience. So there's a lot of words in there, but every single one of them is really important. We're thinking a lot. We're not making decisions based off of subjectivity or opinion. We're actually validating them with data. So this is objective design. That's a little counterintuitive to what we've been taught in the past as designers. We're very focused on goals. We will change the design drastically based off of what our data or feedback tells us, even if it's contrary to our own intuition. And for inbound marketing, I would say it's a friendly, data-driven, and value-focused way of naturally attracting customers to a brand and engaging with them. So instead of going out and disrupting people with an advertisement or like an annoying YouTube video ad before you get to actually watch the video that you want, we're just creating content that people naturally want, and they come to us on their own. It's a much more friendly experience. And if you really think about these two definitions, they both kind of say the same thing, which is that we're trying to create human-centered designs or human-centered marketing, messaging or designs that is centered all around this individual that is actually going to be using our products or interacting with our marketing. So we put them at the center of our decisions. We put them at the center of our research. And essentially, what we're trying to do is provide a great experience to the people that interact with our designs or interact with our marketing. And I think that this is the core principle that inbound marketing and UX design really share with each other. It's just this friendly way of always ensuring that somebody has a great experience when they interact with your marketing, and that it's not some terrible thing that's preventing them from getting to watch the video that they want, and always has a great experience with your design so that they're not confused as they're going through it or disrupted by different things that may be popping out at them. But there's a little bit of a problem. And we all remember this guy? Yeah. despite the fact that we're so focused on delivering this high-quality experience, when we really think about marketing and design, a lot of the time what we're focused on is stuff like this. Social media posts, search results, paid ads, marketing, right? The stuff that we want to use to attract people into our brand, into our design. It's sort of this pre-site experience, anything that happens before they come to the actual website. But if we really think about the entire interaction that somebody has with our brand, it actually looks more like this. Okay, so they have this pre-site experience where they're over here looking at social media and everything like that, but eventually they're going to come to our site and they're going to interact with our landing page, our navigation, our blog. This is all part of the experience, and eventually they're going to leave the site. Maybe they'll interact with a salesperson or a support representative, our email follow-up. All of this collectively plays into the experience that someone is having with our brand. And in a lot of ways, these divides that exist between the two can start to inform each other, right? So when somebody does something on your website, if you see a certain user behavior on your website, you can use that information to inform your ads. And if you find out that people are clicking on specific blog posts, that tells you, like if the title seems to be enticing people to click on that blog post on Facebook, maybe that's where you're sharing it, that tells you a little something about the type of content that you're writing, what people are interested in, right? These things, despite the fact that they seem that they're separate from each other, can actually really inform each other in a lot of ways. And ultimately what we want to do is create a cohesive experience, where what I see on your post on Facebook, I get a certain emotion and a certain feeling from that. And that should be carried out throughout the website experience, throughout people's experience with your employees, everything. This still happens even when we're thinking about the specifics of our on-site experience, like when we get to the actual website. A lot of us want to start by thinking about the content itself, right? Like this is a nice blog post. We've got a really good headline here. We have a call to action in the body. But when somebody's reading this blog post that we've thought about so much, this is actually the context that they're reading it in. There's other things happening on the website. There's a navigation. Maybe we have a little thing that says, hey, join our email list. All of this is really what comprises the entire experience. And again, these different elements can work to inform each other. But sometimes it goes even beyond that. Maybe we've got one of these bars that pops down and says, hey, why don't you redeem this special offer that we have for you? Or we have a slide in that says, hey, are you sure you don't want to get that offer? Because we're going to offer it to you again. And then as soon as you try to leave, we're going to hit you with a modal that says, hey, please don't leave. We'll give you our product for free. This is terrible. All of this is just causing an absolutely horrible experience. And we're not taking into account the bigger picture as we create these designs and we create this content. So in a profession where we would classically say that content is king, when we introduce design into the equation, we find that actually context is king. And that matters a whole lot. Everything that's around these pieces that you're creating. So when we think about UX and inbound marketing as separate practices, and we sort of change our ways of thinking of them as being separate, we see this need to bring them a little bit closer together and make them more relatable to each other. Now, classically, the designer will know a lot about UX, and the marketer will know a lot about marketing. But with this commonality between UX and inbound, we're starting to see the need for the marketer to learn a little bit about design, and for the designer to learn a little bit about marketing, so that they can understand the bigger goals, and they can respect what their coworkers are doing. Now, most of us here probably know about the inbound marketing process. That's what you guys just saw this in Portuguese, which was really cool to see for me, because I always see it in English. But we're all pretty familiar with this. If any of you aren't familiar with it, there's several people in this room that are probably even better experts on it than I am that could tell you all about it. But probably a little less familiar with the UX process, something that looks like this. So I want to go into this a little bit today and talk about what UX is and how it can play into your inbound marketing strategy. I'm going to break this down into 4 sections. The first of which, I'm going to talk about the fundamentals of UX design. So what is UX? What are the core things that I need to know? Some statistics related to it. Why should I even care about UX? An example of a real project where we used this process at HubSpot. And then finally, I'm going to share some tools with you guys that you can, free tools and a couple paid tools that you can use as soon as you leave this room to start doing these practices in your own organizations. So we'll start with the fundamentals of UX. This is my definition for what UX is. Everybody has a sort of different definition for what they actually think UX is. But for me, I think that the most important thing to note about this is that it is human-centered, data-inspired design that assists both the users and the business in completing their goals. There are 4 important words in this part of the definition. The first is human-centered. This again goes back to the idea that we're putting our users at the center of our design and we're letting them make the decisions for us, whether it be through voting by their behaviors, their spending patterns, or actual specific feedback that they give us. The second is that it's data-inspired. You've probably heard a lot of words like data-driven thrown around, right? How many of you all here have heard data-driven or something to that effect? Okay. This implies that you are only listening to data. We don't really want to do that because it's really dangerous to only listen to our intuition and our gut, but it's really equally as dangerous to only listen to data. We can kind of get buried in that. So instead what we say is we're going to look at how people are behaving and their thoughts around that, and we're going to look at some quantitative data, you know, the click patterns, the conversion rates, and everything like that on the site. And then the magic of the designer is going to come out in how they interpret that information and how they turn it into a design solution. The fourth word that's important is users. We want to actually create a design that is really good for our users and that they're going to appreciate. And the fourth word is business. We're not going to be able to keep doing our jobs if we don't supply our business with money, right? So we need to create designs that are also going to serve our business. And what we'll find is a lot of the time these goals, the goals of the users and the goals of the business, can conflict with each other. The user wants one thing, the business wants another thing. How do we create a design that's going to solve for both of them? And that's essentially what this process focuses on. There are 6 principles to good UX design. The first is that the design should be based on an explicit understanding of users, their tasks, and their environment. Who is my audience? What are they trying to accomplish? Where are they working from? Like physically, what type of machines are they using? Do they have disabilities? Are they speaking a different language than me? Users should be involved throughout the design and development process. So all the way from your very start through your launch, and afterward, you're going to be talking to the people that are going to be using your product or your website. The design should be driven and refined by this user-centered evaluation as you're talking to these people. The process should be iterative, which means you're not going to go for like 3 months and work really, really hard on a design and then launch it and forget about it. You're going to keep iterating on this design over and over and over again. It's alive. We're living in a digital world now. We don't print something and just put it out there and we can't change it anymore. You can always change your digital designs. There's a lot of value in that. The design should address the whole user experience, which means that if you're working on one page of your website, that page is not isolated from all the other pages. So you should be thinking about how that page fits into the entire ecosystem of your design rather than just that single page at that single time. And finally, your design team should include multidisciplinary skills and perspectives. So you want designers that come from different backgrounds, educationally, different work backgrounds. They're going to bring different perspectives to the table and solve problems in different ways. These are the 3 phases to my personal UX process that I brought to HubSpot. And I refer to this as Lean UX. There's actually a book on it written by a guy named Jeff Gotthelf. And when we introduced it to HubSpot, it really changed the ways that we were thinking about designing for the web. So these 3 core phases of this process are all really important. The first is think. This is when you're doing research, you're looking into statistics, you're pulling that upfront information to set the context and the tone for your design before you start designing anything. You haven't put any pen to paper yet. You're not working in Photoshop yet. Once you have a really solid foundational direction and understanding from whatever data you've collected, you can move into the make phase. This could start with sketches on paper, or it could start with whiteboarding, like drawing on a whiteboard with a bunch of people in a brainstorming session, or you could go into wireframes, high-fidelity mock-ups, so like designing in Sketch or Photoshop, or even prototypes. And then finally, once you push some code and you release that design, you're going to want to check it. And that's the final phase of this process. That's where you're going back and you're saying, how did our design perform? And what can we improve on it in our next iteration? So if we look at Lean in comparison to several other methodologies on a timeline, we would see something like this. Waterfall, you'll spend a bunch of time like making your design. We're talking months. And then you'll build it, and you'll release it, and that's it. And then you're done with it. In Agile, you'll spend a little bit of time working on your design, and then you'll release one version of the build. Internally, usually like in an alpha or something like that. And then you'll do that again and again until iteratively you're getting something that's a little bit better. But you don't get feedback until that final release, right? In Lean, you're spending a little bit of time designing and building, and then you're releasing it to the public and getting immediate feedback and using that feedback for your next iteration. There's this idea of an MVP, a minimum viable product. And essentially, this is a core tenet of Lean UX. And what this says is that whatever design it is that you're going to release, it should be the minimum amount of work that you have to do to get the amount of feedback that you need. So whatever the minimum design is that you can release before you can get feedback, that's what you need to do for that first iteration. And then you're going to use that feedback to drive the next one, because there's nothing better than live feedback in your design. So when we think about these iterations on this timeline, we see a bunch of these Lean UX cycles, think, make, check, think, make, check, think, make, check, over and over and over again across this timeline. These are all of the deliverables that a Lean UX process can produce. So these are like the actual things that the designer is going to be giving to you, or that you as the designer are going to be producing. There's a lot of things here. And you'll notice that sometimes there's like the same thing in multiple different sections, because depending on the project itself, this process will change. It's a fluid process. And this is, again, where the value of the designer comes out. They're going to know what they need to do in the strategy section versus the research section versus the implementation section. But generally, up front, you're going to be doing stuff like competitive analysis. What are my competitors doing? KPI definition. What are the goals that we're going to measure ourselves against? Mood boards, ecosystem maps, looking at your analytics. Maybe you run surveys or early A/B tests. You could be producing personas or scenarios. And then when you get to the point where you're ready to make the design, you can start with collaborative design, like I mentioned earlier, where you're just in a room writing on a whiteboard, or sketches, wireframes, mock-ups, prototypes. Eventually, you're going to produce actual code and QA test it. So you're going to test it for, like, does this work or not, basically. And then when you release it, you're going to look back at those analytics. You're going to look at heat maps or scroll maps that you may have pulled from it, maybe even fix some bugs, and use that information again for your next iteration. So if, for some example deliverables from the actual process, this is a set of scenarios that we had from a project in the think section. This is a set of wireframes, so basically just like very basic, easy to modify quickly designs. And then these are heat maps that we ran on the homepage of HubSpot.com a little while back. And basically, what this is all empowering you to do is create a thoughtful solution for whatever problem it is that you're given. At the beginning of your project, you're going to have a problem that you need to solve. Get more leads. Have a better experience for our customers, whatever it is. You're going to take all this data in, run all these tests, and use this information to come up with a design solution that is really thoughtful and proven. So now that we know what the UX process is at a high level, why should we even care about all this stuff? I mean, that was a high level view at actually a pretty complex process, right? So what's the actual reason to take this information and start integrating it into your companies? Because in a lot of ways, the Lean UX process, it changes the philosophy behind your design team and the ways that you do things, I would say for the better. But there has to be proof behind this stuff, right? So I want to talk about some of the statistics related to UX. The first thing that we should know is that users actually care about design. We like to think that they don't perceive our designs and that they just want to, complete whatever it is that they're doing and that there's nothing else to it. But actually, people have a pretty good eye for this stuff. even if they aren't designers. In fact, 94% of a user's first impressions of a brand will be related to the design of its website. So they're going to land on your website, they're going to see the design, and immediately start thinking like, what is this design telling me? What does this say about this company? They can't help it. That's human nature. They're also impatient. 79% of users are going to go to a different site if they don't find the information that they're looking for immediately on yours. This is why you need to know what people are looking for and make sure that your information architecture makes sense. Focus on very, very simple and straightforward designs. I always say if you're creating a homepage for a website, pick one thing that you want users to do when they come to your site, and that's the only thing you're going to optimize for on that page. If you try to optimize for a bunch of things, oh, I want them to go to the store, and I want them to go to our quotes page, and I want them to go to the blog, and I want them to email us, they're not going to know what to do because it's going to become too convoluted, too complex, right? Give them a single thing to do. The average user is going to leave a website and not return if it doesn't load within 3 seconds. That sounds pretty fast to us here, but it's actually 3 seconds is a really long time in internet terms. Making sure that we optimize our designs for site speed is really important. And this can get really complex when you're dealing with servers that could be located in North America and you're trying to reach people in Southeast Asia. There's a lot of infrastructure issues there. But actually, the overwhelming majority of weight that is on the internet, is in the majority of opportunity that we have to speed up our websites, it's not happening in the infrastructure. It's happening in very simple things, like how heavy our code is. Have you compressed and minified your code? Have you optimized your images? These things are very straightforward, and it's something that you should actually always be monitoring. It's how fast is my site performing? You can do this very easily in Google Analytics, or you can use tools like Pingdom that will constantly ping your site and say, okay, from this location, like you can ping it from Texas, and then you can ping it from Japan. From these different locations, it's performing at this rate. Amazon calculated that a 1-second load delay to their site will cost them $1.6 billion in a single sales year. You can really see it when you blow it up to Amazon scale because they have so much traffic to the point where they can literally quantify how impatient people are. 50 million mobile apps are downloaded every single day, and 95% of them will be abandoned within a month. If people don't download that app and immediately see the value that you're going to be giving them from it, they're going to delete it. In fact, 25% of apps are abandoned after a single day. So they're like downloading it, and they're like, I don't like this, and they delete it. Users also value good experiences. Over 220 million desktop users and 420 million mobile users run an ad blocker. They don't want to see ads, especially ads that are intrusive and cloud their experience. You are 64 times more likely to climb Mount Everest than you are to click a banner ad. You're also more likely to survive a plane crash. We value experiences that are relevant to us, and this, to me, is where a lot of the value of inbound marketing comes out. These people are coming to this content naturally. They're wanting to engage with it naturally. It's not an ad, even though it's a lead generation for us. This is a really cool example of an effective ad on an even more effective ad platform. So when Snapchat first came out, nobody was really sure how they were going to monetize the platform because it was so friendly to its users, really great UX. But usually when companies introduce ads to their apps that have really good UX, they end up ruining the user experience in the process. Like when Instagram introduces a bunch of intrusive ads in our feed, or Facebook, of course, did this a long time ago. Snapchat has managed to completely avoid that. And the way that they've done that is they've focused on still providing value to the user when they're viewing the ad, and considering the context that the user is in when they're viewing these ads. So this Spotify ad was in a Snapchat story feed. You know, you watch like several snaps, and then you get like a quick ad, and then you got more snaps. But the best ones are the ones that are actually related to what's happening in the Snapchat story itself, and that was the case for this one. This was a 10-second ad that was viewed 26 million times. resulting in a 30% lift in their subscription rate. This ad was actually 2 times more effective for Spotify than any of their other mobile advertising. And that's crazy because mobile advertising is super effective right now. This is an even better example in my opinion. Have you ever seen the sponsored filters on Snapchat? You can like flip through them. This Taco Bell lens received 244 million views on Snapchat in a single day, right? Really integrating the ad into the experience and still providing value to the user. And what's crazy is that the average user will actually play with one of these things for 22 seconds. So not only are a ton of people looking at this, but they're really, really paying attention to it. They're spending time with it. And other companies like Google are actually confirming this idea even more. They are now punishing sites that aren't mobile optimized. They're punishing sites that have interstitial modals on mobile. And they're also punishing sites that aren't using SSL encryption. This is why at HubSpot, we've built our platform around all of these principles. So if you build your site on HubSpot, it's responsive. So of course, it's mobile optimized among other things. We're not going to let you put some type of nasty mobile interstitial in there. And if you want to encrypt your site, you can. This is something that's still a little bit on the rise. Like Google have recently introduced this into the algorithm, and now they're changing the interface on Chrome to let people know when they're on a non-encrypted site, it's actually going to show the lock with an X through it. So they're really saying, hey, we want you to encrypt your websites. And this is all because it provides a better experience for the user. Better security, no weird pop-ups. When I click on a link in Google, I know that I'm going to get a site that's actually optimized for my device. And UX can also be a pretty good investment. A lot of companies are making big bets on user experience design. And if you would have made a big bet on user experience design 10 years ago and invested in a $10,000 investment in a design-centric company, your investment would have yielded 228% greater returns than regular investments in the S&P. So if I had just invested $10,000 in normal run-of-the-mill companies, and then I invested the same $10,000 in design-focused or design-centric companies, my design-focused investment would have performed 228% better than my investment in the regular companies. This shouldn't come as a surprise to us, though. Think about the companies that you would consider to be design-driven. What companies come to mind, right? Apple, Spotify, Slack. These companies are all doing pretty good, right? And we're actually seeing this confirmed so well in the marketplace that now there are entire investment funds, venture capitalists, that will only invest in designers. Designer Fund is a gigantic fund in the United States that will only invest its money in companies that were founded by designers. Because they believe that the critical differentiator for companies when they reach a certain scale is whether or not they're design-centric. Of course, you can debate that, but it's cool to see them making that bet. This is all happening because UX is growing globally. This is happening all over the world. We can see this trend. In the same way that inbound marketing has grown rapidly in the past several years, UX is also making a similar growth pattern. Depends on what you call it. It can change in Google Trends, but we're seeing its growth, especially right now. This map back here is a map of users from a small community that I belong to. You can join it yourself, actually, at designerhangout.co. I don't benefit from that. I just think it's a great community. And we're about 6,000 people. And it's a Slack channel. We just communicate with each other about design. And now what we've taken on is we want to map ourselves around the world to see where everybody's located, because we want to be as global and diverse of a community as possible. And even for our small 6,000 member Slack channel, we're seeing people from all over the world. We're also noticing that user behavior is changing. The ways that people interact with our products and our designs, it's changed a lot. And it's actually happening at an accelerating rate. As devices change, as technologies change, our behaviors change even faster. By show of hands, how many of you all here have read Mary Meeker's Internet Trends Report? Nobody. Okay. Okay, you're gonna love this then, because every year that I read this, I'm like, I have such high expectations for her report, and then I'm like, my mind is blown, even though I already have high expectations. So I'm going to show you some critical parts from Mary Meeker's report. If you want to see it yourself, you can go to this link here. She belongs to an investment research company, so they do a lot of research into what's happening in digital companies, and she shares a lot of this data. It's very, very deep data. So what are we finding out? Advertisers are spending a lot of money in places where people aren't spending a lot of time. So here, the yellow represents the amount of time that people spend on a certain channel, and the blue represents the amount of money that advertisers are spending on that channel. Print, there's a serious disparity there. People are spending like no time there, and there's still so much money there. Radio, getting a little crazy here. TV, time spent is going down, but the money is also going down. It's still a lot of money though, right? Internet, we're right about even, but the biggest opportunity here is in mobile. Tons of time spent there, but basically no money spent there. There's actually, in the USA alone, there's a $22 billion opportunity there. This is why we're seeing stuff like Snapchat doing so well. E-commerce is growing. In fact, it now occupies 10% of retail sales versus 2%, less than 2% in 2000. So we're seeing a lot of brands going online, and actually a lot of brands being founded online. We can think of brands like Warby Parker. The glasses that I'm wearing right now was founded online, and now they're actually becoming a brick and mortar brand. So it's really interesting to see how these companies are evolving and how they're leveraging the digital marketplace. This graph shows the penetration of users among the ages of 18 to 34, so millennials, and then how engaged they are, like how much time they spend for each platform. So up here we can see Facebook has basically everybody, and also basically all of their time. So that is ridiculous. There's nothing to even say about that. But there's a couple interesting outliers here. Instagram has really high penetration and actually pretty good engagement. Snapchat has 40% penetration, which is still pretty low, but the engagement is ridiculous. People are spending like 370 minutes per month, right? Wait, average monthly minutes per visitor, yeah. So they're spending around 370 minutes per month on that platform. So this is basically what I'm indicating here is that eventually this thing's going to go like up over here, probably in her next year's report, right? There's a lot of, and then we also see like legacy networks like LinkedIn, which was just acquired by Microsoft. That's really interesting. Twitter is having a little bit of a hard time. So it's crazy to see how the platforms that we use change and how engagement changes as well. And an interesting thing from this Snapchat piece is that we are continuing to see a growth in image, right? A lot of these new platforms that are being really successful, they're image or video based. Here we can see this is like image-based platforms that are growing. Weird thing is that in this latest graph, all of this is owned by Facebook, despite the fact that it's different companies. So WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, and Facebook Messenger. And then this yellow on top is Snapchat. Image-based platforms are also really good at selling products. So people that visit certain image-based platforms have a really, really high intent to purchase. So on Pinterest, we're seeing that 55% of people who are using Pinterest actually have their primary reason for using it is so that they can find cool products to buy, despite the fact that it's really just like a pin board. Like you're just sharing images with people. People actually specifically go on that site to look for products and purchase products. So we all know that there's a pretty massive opportunity there in content marketing. It's just a matter of figuring out how you really harness that platform. This one's really weird to me. This device, the smartphone, this is something this was the big innovation over the course of the last several years, right? Smartphone is like the way to go. Everybody's getting one. And we can see that growth. This graph here represents smartphone sales from 2007 to 2016. For the first time in the past 10 or so years, smartphone sales actually declined. Their growth declined, I should say. On the other end, Amazon Echo sales are going up. And if you're not familiar with Amazon Echo, it's like this little tube device that can sit in your house, and it listens to everything you say, which is like super creepy. But yeah, yes. You can turn that functionality off, but it's not as awesome because basically it'll listen to what you say and then it'll do things for you. Like it'll talk to you, it'll play music for you, whatever. And so what this is telling us here is that the types of devices that we interact with and that we're wanting to bring into our lives is also changing. So voice is becoming a really, really strong method of input now because machine learning is getting so strong. We're almost 99% accurate on voice identification technology. So I think we're going to see new types of platforms and technologies based off of voice or augmented reality or virtual reality, especially emerging within the next couple of years. And to kind of go off of that stuff that I just said about Amazon Echo, we're also finding that users or consumers are becoming increasingly aware of the risk that comes with all of the data that's being collected on them, and they're kind of getting worried about it. And they want to make sure that they're going to have some privacy and that people are going to treat their data fairly. We all know about everything that happened with Edward Snowden and the NSA, and a bunch of bullshit there. And what we're seeing is that this graph that shows people that are more worried about privacy than they were a year ago has grown by 45%. So when we create designs, as our technologies are changing and as our designs are changing, we're presented with a lot of ethical dilemmas. Because a lot of the time, the law cannot keep up with this new technology. So as designers, it's up to us to figure out what are we comfortable with doing in our designs. Are we comfortable with running this type of test? Like Facebook is famous for running those sentiment analysis tests or listening to your conversations and running ads based off of that. There was actually a really funny image that was released on Mashable today that showed Mark Zuckerberg was sitting next to his laptop with like an Instagram photo, and in the background you could see on his laptop that he had a piece of tape over his webcam camera. So officially, we do know that some creepy stuff is going on there, right? And we're going to be faced with those dilemmas more and more as we continue to design these systems. So again, if you're interested in seeing that report, it's over 220 slides of stuff like that. It's just ridiculous. So you can go to kpcb.com/internet-trends. It's really cool. And if you don't like going through slides, she actually has a video where she presented this whole thing at the Recode conference in San Francisco. What this data really does is it empowers us to understand our audience on an intimate level and use that information to shape the ways that we design. So how's this actually done? I'm going to quickly walk you through an example of a UX project at HubSpot. This is what our homepage used to look like. And then we had a few goal changes, some more information was given to us, and we decided, you know what? We're eventually going to have to get to a design that looks like this. So this is what resulted from the process that I'm about to walk you through. So we started in the think phase. We reviewed the analytics that we had. We had a lot of historical data in HubSpot. HubSpot collects massive amounts of analytics, and it's very personal analytics, so you can know about the specific users that are using your site. And then we also looked in Google Analytics for more macro, like widespread behavioral data. We looked at heat maps and scroll maps that we had run on different iterations of the site. So this is 2014. This is early 2015, and this is middle of 2015. This is a scroll map, so this shows us how far, actually, this shows us where people were spending the most time on the page, as well as how far they scrolled. We looked at session recordings. So we anonymously record people as they're using our website, and we could filter through these and see what their actual behaviors were on the page. We ran actual user tests, so we had questions that we were asking to specific users and having them answer those questions, go through those tasks, and get that feedback. We did stakeholder and customer interviews, interviewing people in the company, what are your goals for this design? And interviewing customers, what do you like about this design? What could be better about it? And because we're a pretty big company, we also get a lot of unsolicited feedback. So people that tell us that they hate our designs without us even asking it. So this is a 2,200 word teardown of our homepage. This guy literally wrote 2,200 words about everything that was wrong with our homepage, and he actually created these images. Like, not just for Americans, assholes, you know, stuff like that. So we were able to take this feedback and use it in our design, which that's really cool. Like when people, you know, come from out of nowhere and they give you feedback on your design, it's very easy to kind of like, you know, be like, wait a second, like don't be mean about my design. I put a lot of work into this. But really, we embrace that feedback. You know, as people criticize our work, no matter how harsh it is. In fact, the more harsh it is, usually the better it is. We use that information to make our design better. Then, once we had collected all of that data and we had a pretty solid direction, we moved into the make phase. And we started in this project with wireframes. So we went right to wireframes. We were confident in the direction that we had. Multiple different variations. You can see there's a couple like drastically different structures around here. We used this to hone in on what was technically possible with our developers. We did some early testing with users to see what would work. Obviously, stakeholders wanted to see what we were doing. Once we had a really solid design structure, we moved into mock-ups or visual design, adding photos and colors and typography to the design. Then we actually started to create small interactions. What's going to happen when a mouse is moving around this page? Obviously, it's not an image. It's going to have to change at certain times. We introduced HubSpot Smart Content. So this is something that I really love about our company, is that, as I mentioned earlier, we're a dog food company, which means that we eat our own dog food. So essentially what we're saying is that we're selling our customers a product that we use ourselves. And this helps us to understand the product, to build it better. Our entire website is built off of the HubSpot product. So as part of that, we're able to use this feature called Smart Content, where it detects what type of a user you are. There's a bunch of different data that goes into that. And it will serve you a different experience based off of who you are as an individual. So theoretically, we could all go browse HubSpot.com right now and have different individual experiences while doing that, because we're all different people. We introduced accessibility, so we were testing the design to see how does this work with people that suffer from different disabilities like color blindness or actual blindness or deafness. And we internationalized it as much as we possibly could. So we had to translate the design into multiple different languages, which can be difficult because we're primarily designing in English, and when we're translating it into Japanese, the characters that we would have in English would take up about 100% more space in Japanese. So we have to give a lot of extra space for everything that we design. These are some crazy considerations that you really have to take into account early in the design process. We developed the code with our developers, and then we QA tested it. So we tested it on multiple different devices and multiple different browsers to see how it was going to behave for anybody, no matter what device they were using. And then we launched it at Inbound. Inbound is our annual event held in Boston every year, and it's an industry conference. We had 15,000 people there last year, so it's a pretty big event for us, and we launch a bunch of new products. We get together and we talk about marketing. Some of the world's greatest thought leaders are there. And so every year at Inbound, we like to launch some new things on our website. But of course, this wasn't the end of it. We still went back and we went through the check process. We wanted to figure out how this thing performed after we launched it. We actually learned a lot. We found areas where we did really well, and we found areas where we didn't do quite so well. And now, the design that you'll see if you go to the website now actually looks something like the one on the right. So this is, again, going through that iterative process. We ran somewhere around 15 tests. From this one to this one, 15 tests on that page to determine what the optimal design is at this point. And probably if I were to talk to you guys a month from now, it would be another different design that would pop up, because we're constantly learning more about our audience and the ways that our site should be designed. Unsurprisingly, from this project, we saw that conversion rate on the homepage went up, exit rate went down, so people were much less likely to leave, and also pain point exhibiting behaviors went down. So they were less likely to do really weird things, like go directly from the homepage to the FAQ. That doesn't make any sense. Obviously, there was a question that wasn't being answered. They were less likely to search for things that they should have been able to find in the navigation. There were less misguided clicks, like them clicking on elements that weren't interactive. So now that we know the UX process, the statistics behind it, and what an ideal project actually looks like, what are some of the tools that we can use to practice this in our company? So I want to talk about some of my favorite tools, the tools worth using when you're getting started out in this stuff. Like this is higher level, the minimum type of stuff that you want to be looking at. This is all of it. Everything I'm going to talk about is right here. So if you want to take a picture of the slide, or if you go to this short link here, all of these tools are on there. In the Think section, usertesting.com is the first. This is a remote, unmoderated user testing platform. So you can recruit people and test your design with them all on that platform. It's pretty cool. Hotjar is a plugin that you can get for your website. It's free. And this will run heat maps. It'll record sessions. You can run surveys on your website. I love this product. Crazy Egg is a heat mapping and scroll mapping tool. This is for when you get a little bit bigger and you're dealing with really high impact sites. You're going to want to have something that's specialized for that because Crazy Egg does not do data sampling, but Hotjar does. Usability will collect feedback live on your site. Usability Hub is a really cool tool where you can create a design that's in process, upload it to this tool, and get feedback immediately from people in this community. There's different ways that you can do it. There's free packages and there's paid packages. But say that you've got a wireframe and you're like, I don't know if this navigation in this wireframe makes sense. You can upload your wireframe to Usability Hub and ask a bunch of questions about the navigation, like where would you click? What's the next thing that you would do? And you can get that data without actually building the product. So it lets you catch those big issues up front. And Optimal Workshop does similar things, but it's more around the information architecture of the site. So you can do card sorting. Have you guys ever heard of card sorting? Yeah, so you can do all of that online. It's much easier than having to go to a coffee shop and pay somebody to do it for you. You can do tree tests and stuff like that, really cool stuff there. When you get into the make phase and you want to actually create this stuff, Glyphy is just a graphing tool. And so if you want to create user flows, Glyphy is the best tool to do that with. Xmind is a mind mapping tool. So as you're coming up with ideas in these brainstorming sessions and you want to sort of write them out in a visual way, Xmind is really good for that. Balsamiq and Axure are wireframing tools. There's a lot of different wireframing tools. These are really the only two that you need to know about. And you can actually, if you want to, you can wireframe in Sketch, which Sketch and Photoshop are visual design tools, primarily, user interface tools. And then for prototyping, we have a million different options. This is a very crowded space right now, but these are the ones that I like. InVision is the best. That's a free prototyping tool that you can get, and it is amazing how they're building this platform. If you use Sketch and InVision right now, you're in designer heaven. I don't think there's ever been a better time to be a designer because InVision has done so much for the design community. Adobe XD is a really, really cool product that Adobe is building right now where you can design and prototype all in one interface. It's still in the beta, but they're doing a new thing for Adobe where they're actually building this product with the design community. They're letting designers tell them what they think about it. Marvel is a prototyping tool. Webflow is a really cool tool, startup out of San Francisco, where it will actually spit out production code. So you can design in Webflow, and it does all of the coding for you. It's not perfect, but I think that their vision is the future. Eventually, we're not going to, for the majority of sites that we build, they're so predictable now, we're not going to be writing quite as much code. And I think that they're onto that. UXPin is another cool sort of wireframing prototyping tool. And if you don't want to get involved with any of these tools, you can actually use Keynote, which is installed on if you have a Mac, it's already on your computer. And it's really a great prototyping tool, especially if you learn the different animation capabilities. It can do some cool stuff. And then once you've finished your design and you've launched it and you want to learn about its performance, you can get data from Google Analytics. That's free for everybody. HubSpot provides very, very in-depth and personal data. We could go on and on about that for hours, but that's when you're getting to a little bit of a higher level and you're really wanting to crank things up. Mixpanel is a very, very intense custom data implementation. This is where, if you have data scientists or data analysts that you're hiring in your organization, and you're creating apps, or you need very, very specific data that will cross from your website into your app and follow the user the whole way, Mixpanel can do that stuff. It's just it's all completely custom. It requires a developer. Kissmetrics is a funnel creation tool, and Optimizely is an A/B testing tool. Of course, if you really think about it, all of the stuff that these tools do, you can all do in HubSpot anyway. Like if you want to A/B test in HubSpot, you can do that. It's just depending on what you want for your workflow. Everybody, whenever I do these talks, they ask me for like book recommendations. So I've started to just put them on the slides. These are the books that I would recommend if you're starting out in UX and you want to start learning about what UX design is or what human-centered design is. This first book, The Design of Everyday Things, was written by Don Norman. He's the father of UX. He founded a firm called Nielsen Norman Group. If you Google Nielsen Norman Group, or if you go again to this short link, I have a link to it there, their content on UX is unparalleled. They've basically paved the way for the user experience industry. In fact, Don Norman coined the term user experience. So I think that he's qualified. Steve Krug wrote Don't Make Me Think. This is another founding book for UX. And then finally, this is not commonly referred to in UX, but data is such an important thing for designers now. Like we really have to justify our design decisions. And in order to do that, you got to have like at least a basic understanding of statistics. So How to Lie with Statistics is a cool introductory book to like data visualization and how statistics work. And it also tells you how graphs can be manipulated to be showing you like real data, but actually kind of be lying to you because you'll conclude different things. So I think that if we can follow these practices, we can really find some great ways to bring design and marketing much closer together and view them as partners in this relationship of bringing our customers into our products and delivering them a really good experience. This is HubSpot's information over here. If you're curious about me, this is my information. I'm mostly obsessed with HubSpot, so that's a good place to go. And then this short link here popped up multiple times throughout the talk. This has sources for a lot of the information that I cited here, but also it's just like this entire UX design guide that I built, just because people are always asking me, like, what are your favorite tools? Books, what's the UX process? If you want to learn more about this stuff and really like spend some time studying it, you can go there, and that thing should be pretty useful. I will stick around up here for a little bit if you guys want to ask me questions. I think that these presentations are really valuable, but perhaps the best value that I can deliver you is to answer some questions, whether it be about HubSpot and inbound marketing or about UX design. I'm happy to do it.